Connected by purpose, driven by passion. This is Children's Healthcare Canada's Spark Live webinar series.
Children's Healthcare Canada would like to thank our Keystone funding partners for their ongoing contributions that support all of our programs and activities, including this Spark Live weekly webinar series. Spark Live is where we gather each week to curate, convene, and showcase excellence and innovation from across the child and youth healthcare community. Our goal is to spark conversation, ideas, and action. There are two options to join in on the live conversation. Questions and comments for our panel or presenters can be typed into the question box, or comments that you want to share with the audience can be typed into the chat box and be visible to all of the attendees. For those of you on Twitter, tag @ChildHealthCan on any webinar-related tweets or use the hashtag SparkLive. And to keep up to date on all of Children's Healthcare Canada's webinars and other activities, be sure to sign up for our weekly Spark Bulletin by visiting our website at childhealthcan.ca.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of Children's Healthcare Canada's Spark Live webinar series. I'm Paula Robeson, your host for the next hour. Children's Healthcare Canada acknowledges that our offices, located in Ottawa, are on the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. We are grateful to have the opportunity to be present in this territory. Today we're delighted to bring you Ready2Work, development of a user-informed online employment platform for job seekers with autism, and we're grateful for the support of the Child Right Network in bringing this to you. As mentioned in the intro video, please type your questions into the question box at any time. I'll prompt you via the chat as well, and I'll pose the questions to our panel at the end of the session. I'd like to introduce our speakers today. Jean Fan is a MA Masters of Arts student in the Department of Applied Disability Studies at Brock University, and her research interests include understanding the needs of individuals with neurodevelopmental disabilities and their support systems to foster mental health and well-being. Her research is supported by our next speaker, Dr. Priscilla Burnham-Rozia. Dr. Riosa is an associate professor in the Department of Applied Disability Studies at Brock University and a doctoral level board-certified behavioral analyst, and has been working in the disability field for over 17 years. And it's my pleasure to pass the mic to Priscilla.
Thank you for that introduction, Paula, and thank you to everyone for joining Jean and I today on this webinar. We're really looking forward to sharing our research project with you. Before I go ahead and get started, I'd like to acknowledge our funders, the Child Right Network, and the Knowledge Translation Innovation Grant that we were awarded in 2019, which has made this project possible. The Ready2Work project team consists of collaborators who collectively bring extensive clinical, teaching, research, tech, as well as lived experience to our project, which is ultimately about understanding and supporting the employment needs of people with autism across the lifespan. Our team includes representation from Brock University, the York ASD Partnership, Integrated Services for Autism and Neurodevelopmental Disorders, McMaster University, and Help Scout Canada. So Jean is going to start us off by reviewing some background literature on employment and people with autism spectrum disorder, our research questions, the project methodology, and then she's going to provide an overview of the focus group data from employment professionals. Go ahead, Jean.
Existing literature indicates that vocational and employment success has been identified as a top priority for people with autism. Despite clear evidence indicating that people with autism are motivated to obtain employment, rates of unemployment and underemployment for this population remain among the highest in Canada. For example, in one Canadian survey, rates of unemployment for people with autism were as high as 86%, compared to 6% of those without autism. These results are concerning, given that when people have gainful employment, it relates to greater opportunities for social inclusion, increased financial independence, and improvement in self-esteem and overall quality of life. Research has also shown that personal as well as social factors influence employment success for people with autism. Personal characteristics include functional ability, such as skills to engage in social events, and independence in daily living skills. Social characteristics that relate to employment include factors such as having completed high school and participating in cooperative work experiences. Interestingly, these factors have shown to relate to employment success more so than IQ. Research has shown that there are many notable challenges and barriers to successful employment faced by job seekers with autism. The opportunity to get a job may be impacted by negative employers or workplace attitudes regarding people with disabilities. Other skill-related challenges and barriers to employment access exist. For example, a job seeker's skill at creating a resume, interviewing effectively, and networking with others may have an impact on whether a job seeker is successful. Given these employment barriers, employment supports are critical for many people with autism. However, relatively little is known about the specific tools or resources that are useful to job seekers with autism. Researchers have recommended online employment resources. To our knowledge, few tailored online resources for job seekers with disabilities exist. One such resource is from the Sierra Group. It is a general employment platform that offers job-seeking information and job readiness resources for individuals with disabilities. This website is geared toward people with a variety of disabilities, thus it does not address the idiosyncratic needs of people with autism. This platform is autism-specific and includes a variety of resources relevant to caregivers, professionals, and people with autism across the lifespan. In the area of employment, there are province-specific links, Canada-wide general resources, and international resources. Included among these links is a toolkit document to support job seekers with autism. An area of opportunity is the development of a dynamic and individualized online platform emphasizing employment readiness for people with autism. Therefore, the primary goal of our project is to develop a dynamic and end-user informed online platform that addresses the employment needs of people in the autism community. We aim to answer the following research question. Firstly, what do job seekers with autism perceive to be important to successfully enter the workforce that is amenable to an online platform? And secondly, how can the information collected in question 1 be used to develop an online platform to address these needs? The Ready2Work project is comprised of 3 phases. During phase 1, focus groups were conducted to understand job-seeking tools deemed desirable or necessary according to people with autism, their caregivers, and professionals supporting job seekers with autism. During phase 2, an online employment platform will be developed based on the data collected in phase 1. Participants will be asked to use the platform and provide feedback on its content and usability. The goal of phase 3 will be to refine the platform before its final release, with additional feedback from end users. Phase 1 of the study is completed. 5 focus groups were conducted with 29 participants. Participants included 16 professionals, 6 caregivers, and 7 autistic self-advocates. During the session, participants were asked about their experiences with job seeking support, online job seeking tools or resources, and possible tools that are needed to help people with autism prepare for work. Following the focus groups, we conducted a thematic analysis using a deductive approach where we took what the participants said and organized them into themes and sub-themes within and across cases. The preliminary findings for professional focus group data revolved around the following 4 themes: social employment challenges, limitation of existing job-seeking resources, transferability of supports and resources, and recommendation for successful employment supports and resources. I will review each theme in detail over the next few slides. Professionals recognize that individuals with autism encounter barriers and challenges when accessing employment. These challenges may often be socially constructed. For example, the traditional job application process includes components such as resumes and interviews as methods to evaluate individual skills and fit for the role. One participant stated that this is problematic because people with autism often do not fare well in these processes, and so they get out of running before they're ever considered for their skills. Despite these expectations, employers may not have the knowledge, experience, or compassion toward people with autism. As such, they may put people with autism into boxes in terms of what they think they are capable of. This may impact the diversity and inclusion practices in a company. Social and company-specific attitudes toward diversity and inclusion may also create tension for an applicant who is unsure about whether or not they should disclose their ASD diagnosis. Professionals also describe that further employment difficulties may result from structural challenges. There are a range of abilities when it comes to individuals with autism. Some job seekers with autism may require more support than others throughout the employment process. While they might need extra help, professionals working in the employment centers may not be equipped with the skills or knowledge required to support them. Also, with the current state of the job market, there may not be many employment opportunities, which may increase the difficulty of the job search for people from neurodiverse population. It is hard to get a job for anyone, but professionals in our sample stated that it's even harder for individuals with disabilities. Beyond the social challenges, current in-person employment programs are primarily focused on pre-employment skills, such as resume building and interviewing. Professionals in the focus groups mentioned that many programs do not focus enough on job exploration, which can be costly. A less costly alternative for job exploration would be an online employment platform. However, professionals described the limitation of these formats. They indicated it is often difficult for individuals with autism to navigate existing job search sites. Moreover, a major concern indicated by the professionals was the translation of helpful face-to-face resources to an online platform. Many professionals expressed that it would be difficult to replace the value of having a live person at a face-to-face employment program who is able to provide real-time guidance at each step of the process. Although several limitations were described, professionals made several recommendations to address these concerns and to develop successful employment supports for this population. They recommended that the online platform should provide resources that would be free of charge, have features that could be individualized, such as a live chat to help guide the individual through the site, or a voice-to-text function. A job exploration component to broaden job seekers' knowledge of work possibilities. The platform should include some form of training on skills needed in the employment process. For example, a focus on social skills that are appropriate in a work environment. It should provide recommendations based on the job seeker's skills and interest. It should include an online network to expand the resources and supports job seekers could access. Lastly, professionals felt it is critical for the platform to provide resources to support those who are helping the job seekers through the job search process, whether this may be a professional or caregiver. Overall, the professionals' focus group data reflected the current literature of the challenges and barriers of employment for people with autism. Participants underscored the value of having an online employment platform that target the specific needs of this population. They stated that a successful platform would be integrated. It would provide resources for a job seeker and those who are in their network, including caregivers and support persons. The professional stated that the platform could be a springboard for the user. Job seekers could access resources and make connections to initiate this process. Priscilla is now going to review the themes from our caregiver participants.
Perfect, thank you, Jean. So there was a lot of overlap between the caregiver themes and our findings from the professionals. Caregivers described similar social barriers to employment challenges, and they highlighted the limitations of existing job-seeking resources. Three themes that were unique to the caregivers in our sample focused on educational resources for employers, those for caregivers, and finally, educational resources for job seekers. Caregivers stated that employers who were not familiar with the employability and benefits of hiring a person with autism may be missing out on an excellent employee. To highlight this point, one of our participants stated, "They're punctual, never sick, and they're not socializing. They're more productive." Caregivers recommended that we feature speakers like Randy Lewis from Walgreens, who is a father to an autistic son. Randy transformed his business model and leadership philosophy of inclusive hiring practices, where he created employment opportunities to thousands of people with various disabilities. Caregivers also described the importance of employers demonstrating flexibility within their hiring processes. For example, conducting phone or online interviews may put less pressure on a job seeker with autism compared to an in-person interview, and of course, this is already more likely to be the case right now, given COVID-19. Caregivers wanted resources and education to develop their skills to support their job-seeking children through the process. This included accessing online resources to help their child explore job-related interests, understand what it means to work and have a job, and develop their skills. Caregivers also expressed interest in resources that would assist them in helping their child develop skills and interests in alternative employment spaces. So this would include self-employment as well as social enterprises. And social enterprises are essentially organizations that have a main social objective and overall mission to serve the public and develop a community, and they operate one or more secondary enterprises that focus on generating income that gets reinvested into that social objective. Finally, caregivers described areas where the online platform could include content on self-disclosure and employee rights. Disclosing one's diagnosis was a topic discussed by many of the caregivers in our sample. Considerations surrounding self-disclosure, such as, first of all, do I disclose or do I not disclose? And secondly, if I disclose, when do I do it? So those would be examples of some important topics to include for job seekers. Understanding employee rights was another educational topic described by our caregivers. They recommended including resources to inform job seekers about their rights as employees. They also recommended information on how to advocate for oneself and knowing how to discuss concerns with unions or other available employee supports. Caregivers wanted job seekers to know that they don't have to agree to everything just because they have a job. So one of our parents gave an example stating, if they're a high school student and the employer tells them that the job is 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., they don't have to say, okay, I'll do it because it's a job and I have to do it. Rather, it might not be the right job for them. This quote highlights a major concern of caregivers, which was that job seekers might be compelled to do a job that they didn't like, or they might agree to do part of a job they didn't agree with in order to maintain job security. As such, they suggested that our online platform should contain relevant cautionary information. Overall, caregivers' online platform suggestions centered around educational resources that would support all involved along the way. They wanted to ensure that employers, caregivers, and job seekers have access to relevant online resources as the job seeker they were representing move through the employment process. So Jean is going to review the themes from our 7 autistic self-advocates who participated in the focus groups.
The self-advocates themes emphasize flexibility in modalities in the job-seeking process, professionalism, and engagement in community development or networking. Self-advocates indicated that they would like the platform to attract employers who are more open to taking a less traditional approach to the hiring or recruitment process. Thus, the platform should have resources that would provide employers with ideas on how to implement these new approaches and what these approaches look like. Some examples of non-traditional approaches would include having job postings that were autism-friendly. This means written job postings should be concise and focused on the technical skills that are needed for the job. Another example is to have video job postings, where there are video demonstrations of the skills that are needed to apply. Additionally, the platform should have resources that entice employers to be more open and flexible about receiving different types of job applications, such as video resumes or portfolios as resumes. Similar to caregivers, self-advocates in our sample indicated that the platform should also inform employers to provide job seekers with the option to conduct a phone interview or video interview instead of the traditional in-person interview. Lastly, self-advocates were aware that they may not always be a perfect fit for a particular role, but they would be interested in being advised on formal courses they could take to help them develop skills for a job that they might be missing. Moreover, some self-advocates indicate a preference for employers to communicate openly and clearly about their thoughts and intentions. One self-advocate said that when an employer says that they would call to let the job seeker know if they got the position or not, that they should follow through. Another example of the desire for open communication came from one self-advocate who said that suddenly they were no longer given shifts. The self-advocate eventually contacted the employer, hoping to find out the reason, but was informed that there were no more shifts available to him, so he quit and found another job. Finally, self-advocates indicated that the platform should be engaging and include interactive materials, such as videos, guides, or checklists. They also stated that the opportunity to practice applying to job postings or to practice their interview skills while receiving online feedback would be valuable. Self-advocates recommended discussion forums as a networking tool to find mentors, share resources, and develop an online community with other self-advocates seeking employment. Overall, self-advocates wanted the platform to provide resources that would equip them with the skills needed to be successful in a traditional job search process. They felt that the method used on the platform to teach these skills should also be accommodating to their needs. The self-advocates also hoped that the platform would promote resources that would entice employers to consider a non-traditional approach to hiring. Priscilla will now review our Phase 2 study plan.
Thanks, Jean. So we are currently preparing for phase 2 of the study, which is focused on developing the platform based on those recommendations from our phase 1 needs assessment. So here we are using the analyzed focus group data, and we're mapping out a website aimed at meeting the employment readiness needs of job seekers with autism. So as a research team, we have been meeting quite regularly to discuss ways to translate the phase 1 themes into a model for the Ready2Work website. And so far, we've been doing a lot of background work on conceptualizing the site, so its structure and the purpose of the site, being sure to stay close to our participants' recommendations. The next few slides that I'm going to talk about depict the wireframe models, which outline the site structure and functionality that we've been developing, while we wait to get into some of the finer details of website development after our research ethics amendments for phase 2 have cleared. One of the major organizational recommendations from the focus group data was to divide the website into 3 distinct sections. So Our participants wanted a section for self-advocates or job seekers. Secondly, one for caregivers. And just to note that on this diagram, you can see that we've used the label advocates to represent family members and other caregivers. And a third section for employers. You'll notice that the branches stemming from the three sections here include topics that were deemed relevant to each of the three user groups. The orange highlighted section here indicates, for example, how we are planning to organize the materials for the self-advocates section. It essentially follows the different stages of the job search process, which was another recommendation from our focus group participants. Another recommendation was to include job-seeking information and resources in addition to incorporating self-paced learning modules to help job seekers assess their job skills and interests. Participants recommended that we include advocacy information for caregivers and other support persons on the platform. So, for example, information on employee rights and how caregivers might support a job seeker in their interactions with employers. The recommendation to include employer-specific resources is depicted here at the top of this diagram. These resources would support employers through the planning, hiring, as well as onboarding processes. These sections may include things like best practice guidelines, accommodation-specific resources, tips on recognizing and capitalizing on the strengths of people with autism, and suggestions on how to assess person-environment fit in a workplace setting. In line with our phase 1 analyses, the website will have static content. So for example, links to resources that are already available on the internet that we have organized based on our data themes, and those are depicted in gray, in addition to user-generated content, which is where the emphasis will be on building an online community, as depicted in light blue. The blend of static and dynamic content was based on participants' desire for a website that included not only consolidated information relevant to the job search process, but that also included a dynamic community board type of section. This community network could evolve and be kept alive, so to speak, by people in the community who share information such as job postings, training opportunities, workshops, and so on. This dynamic content would encourage website users to frequently return to the website rather than treating it as a single visit type of site where they get the information that they needed and potentially never come back. And just to mention as well, the cream colored boxes represent our account functionality sections, which would run in the backdrop in order to keep the website running and hold registered users' profile information. So this is our first iteration of a basic black and white mock-up of the main page. You'll notice close to the top that there are three sections that represent the intended end users. So self-advocates or job seekers, employers, and family and advocates. Two columns in the middle of the page show recent activity in both the discussion and recent job listing sections of the community board. By clicking on the resource button on the main page, a user would have access to this, which is actually hot off the press. Nick, our tech expert, sent us a screenshot of his current developments yesterday, and so we popped it into our presentation for today. And this is a recent iteration of the available job seeking resources template. So here icons would indicate whether the content is a summary of a resource that's linked to another site, or if it's content created on the Ready2Work website. The green icon indicates site-developed content, as I mentioned, whereas the pink icon here indicates content that is located on another site. Searches can be narrowed as well, depending on a person's interests. And when the type of audience is selected, so in this case advocates, additional category prompts will appear with topics specific to that user. This is a basic mock-up of user-added content in a job listings section of the website. And here's where we envision job openings to be posted by, for example, employers looking to hire people with autism or other employment professionals aware of different positions that might appeal to the autism community. This section of the site will be searchable too, depending on the type of opportunity a person is looking for. So whether that is part-time, full-time, paid, or volunteer opportunity. As mentioned on one of the previous slides, in the bottom left-hand corner here, you'll notice that the website will be account-based, where users will be asked to create an account in order to post on the site and have full access to the community board. Job seekers could mark discussion posts and job listings as favorites through their accounts as well. The general layout, I would say, of this listing section would be similar in the discussion section of the website, where recent posts would appear at the top of the site. The layout would also be comparable to how Facebook or Instagram posts appear. So users can scroll through content with more recent content at the top, or they can use the search term tool to find specific topics of interest to them that may have been written about by other website members. Registered website users will be able to post events that may be of interest to self-advocates, employers, and caregivers. So an example of this might be, for instance, a job fair with date and location details and description. When the website is ready for pilot testing, we will start recruiting participants, and we're primarily focused on recruiting job seekers with autism and caregivers for this phase of the study to provide some feedback to us on the usability and performance of the website. So we'll be asking participants to complete specific tasks on the site. So for example, find X, where X is a job posting. Another example might be resources on how to dress for an office interview. And we will also be collecting survey data to capture their feedback. The survey includes questions surrounding participants' education and training, employment or occupational status, role in the employment process, specific experiences with supporting a person with autism, experiences in the employment search process, again, depending on whether they are a job seeker, a caregiver, or an employment professional. These demographics will essentially provide us with the general characteristics of the participants who are testing out our site. Feedback on the website usability and performance includes questions such as the accessibility of the content, the relevance of the content, and participants' navigation experiences. We will also be examining internal website analytics data, such as pages frequently visited, the amount of time spent on the site, and pages clicked to get to a particular resource. Our next steps for phase 2 include, again, obtaining ethics review board clearances across both of the academic institutions involved in the study. Second, developing both website and mobile versions of the site, which again is being led by Nick, our tech expert, and he's being supported by our team of graduate students, where the emphasis here will be on developing website content. Third, we will be recruiting end users to test out the website and provide formal feedback through our survey. And just to mention also that video interviewing is going to be an option if that's a participant preference. And I should mention as well that the anticipated timing of these activities is anywhere from around now. So as soon as we get that second ethics clearance that we're waiting on, until probably about January. Phase 3 will be our official launch of the website, where we will have incorporated the necessary adjustments based on our phase 2 pilot testing. During this phase, we will recruit additional participants for feedback on the revised website's usability and performance, and we would expect that this phase will start around January or February. Overall, we have many exciting next steps lined up for this project, and I can say on behalf of our team, we are looking forward to the end product from this research. And again, our hope is that we are developing a valuable, user-informed resource for job seekers on the autism spectrum, as well as for those who support them. Thank you very much for your attention, and Jean and I are happy to take any questions.
Thank you both. Now's my chance to plug your opportunity for questions, and we've got a few coming in now, and I'll start here. Amy asks, I'm curious to know about the gender composition of the self-advocate participant group.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I'm just thinking, Jean, do you recall offhand, because I know we have it documented, but it was primarily male. I believe we had one female participant. Jean, would you be able to confirm that?
Yes, most of them were male, and then we had 1 or 2 female participants.
Okay, great. Leanne has 2 questions. Given the spectrum of abilities for folks with autism spectrum disorder, what reading level will the website be aimed at?
That's a really good question. And as a team, I would say that we've talked quite a bit about, how to make it as accessible as possible. And that's something that we heard very strongly from all of the groups of participants in our sample. So the caregivers, the self-advocates, and the professionals who participated. And our thought was that the readability, the level of reading and the readability of the site would be, it would be someone who could navigate, a website on their own, and they would be able to, go through the content on their own, but potentially with a little bit of support, but be relatively independent in being able to navigate the website. And I should say that with also adding that some of most of the content, and Jean had mentioned it as well, will be heavily balanced between having text content, but making that as bare minimum and minimalist as possible, and adding elements, adding visual elements, adding video elements as well, but of course balancing that too and not making those pieces overwhelming. We talked very preliminary, I would say more than 6 months ago, even before we started, we were just at the beginning stages of doing our recruitment for the focus groups, and we pulled up a bunch of examples from existing employment websites, and we knew exactly what would not appeal even to us, even to someone like me who doesn't I don't have autism, and to me some of the examples that we were looking at were pretty intense, with lots of things flashing and moving quickly. And so our goal with this in terms of readability is to make it as accessible as possible to as many people as possible, with the underlying tone of knowing that the people who would be using the site would be relatively independent with their website navigation skills. I hope that answers the question. I feel like that was a bit long of an answer.
I think it did. And Leanne can come back on if
Okay,
she
yeah.
has other subsequent questions.
Okay.
She did have a second question, and that is, will the employers have to go through any security or review checks?
That's a good question. In terms of security or review checks, in terms of being able to post, I guess?
I'm assuming, I'm assuming that it relates to any employer who's sharing on your site and available, open, interested in hiring folks with autism or other neurodevelopmental disorders.
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think that's something that we can certainly bring back to our research team. Our thought was that, again, just like Jean and I both highlighted, that the website is meant to be, so a big part of it is going to be static content and culling resources from existing places, because there's actually quite a bit out there. but it's not organized in a way that is generally accessible to the population for whom we're developing this site for. And then the other major piece of our project is that community board, because what we were hearing time and time again through looking at the data and speaking to people out in the field was that, it's the community who are the experts. It's people with lived experiences who actually know a lot more about, upcoming training, job opportunities. Hey, this is coming up, or this session is available, you can sign up. And these are things that I'm not aware of, and some of the members of my team aren't even aware of. So our thought was that, by creating a community board, that would be a place where the experts in the community could share amongst themselves. And I say that, again, I think it's an important question to consider some of the security parameters around, who's posting and what they're posting. I know that Nick has spoken to us in our team meetings about sort of moderating posts. So there would be an opportunity to do that. If from the moderator's perspective, which would be me at this point, or perhaps Jean, or one of our other graduate students on the team, to sort of monitor and see if there are any red flags, but we would certainly have to speak as a group to come up with something that keeps everybody in our community safe. It's a great point. I'm making a note of that right now.
Wonderful. Neil has asked, if we can share your PowerPoint via the Knowledge Exchange Network, and B, a question. As part of the website testing process, are the professional social service workers supporting people with autism spectrum disorder or employers using the site?
Sorry, Paula, could you, actually, I should just answer the first question. Yes, we can share the PowerPoint for sure. And then the second question, so is that about the testing and the phase 2, whether or not employers or other professionals could participate in the phase? Is that what the question was?
So it appears to be, but I will ask Neil to clarify his question and move to a subsequent question to give him time to do so. Hannah has asked, will employers be able to participate nationally, or is this Ontario specific?
That's also a good question. We are happy to have as many voices involved in this process as possible, because again, we're making this with the goal of it being end user informed. It's not necessarily Ontario specific, although just given the reach of many of the members on our research team, it just happens to be that Ontario and mainly the GTA are the areas that we have our direct connections to, but certainly we would love to, and we would welcome other provinces to be involved in this initiative. Absolutely.
Wonderful. So Neil has responded. He said, so the initial question was, as part of the website testing process, are the professionals, the social workers supporting people with autism spectrum disorder, or the employers using the site, are the professionals that you're seeking to provide feedback, are they those on the site or the employers?
I think that the website is open to anybody really who has an interest in supporting the employment readiness needs of people on the autism spectrum. I think that, if say, for example, we have an individual with autism who has a support worker that they work very closely with, and absolutely that support worker could navigate the site alongside the individual and support them along the way. It's really meant to be a general tool. We have thought and talked a bit in our research team about really developing a whole section, or maybe it's a project in and of itself, directly targeted to employers. We have a small section that we are allocating here, but we have been thinking a lot about, sometimes it's, and from our data and from the existing research that we know of, oftentimes we can get many people with autism, ready for a job. They've been through the training, they've done all of these things, but it's the employers who don't let them in, so to speak, right? And so that's another angle, and I think it's interesting that that question has been brought up, because it's something that our team has been talking a lot about, and that might be something that we might target in the future, absolutely.
Wonderful. Will there be resources, Emma has asked, will there be resources available for BIPOC job seekers who may face additional systemic or structural challenges to finding employment?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I think that the resources that we are providing to job seekers really they're going to be relatively universal, right? So, and we're operating with, and that's another thing that has, we've talked about early on in our research team meetings, was that the site, we're sort of going at the site and the resources from a universal design perspective. So we're making it accessible. We're talking about any potential barriers, of course, idiosyncratic to the needs of people with autism as per the participants and what they've said in the focus groups. But certainly, I believe that, the topics that we are planning to cover, including employee rights and knowing how to advocate for yourself and knowing how to talk to a boss and how to advocate for a particular type of interview, or how to ask, about breaks, or whatever the case is. I think that those kinds of skills can certainly apply to many different people.
Wonderful. So let's see. Neil has further clarified. Let's see. Employers, or are you seeking input from social service professionals supporting people with ASD? Okay.
I see. Okay. We're open. I mean, if Neil, if you're asking about phase 2 and phase 3 participants specifically, and who's going to be recruited, I think, and I mentioned it pretty quickly, our emphasis is going to be on recruiting self-advocates as well as caregivers to inform, usability, navigation experience, performance. Does it actually meet your needs? Is this what you're looking for? Is this what you need help with? Are these the kinds of resources that appeal to you? But certainly we might also consider, depending on the interest in participating in those phases of the study. I mean, if we only get, a small handful of people, sure, we'll get, some folks who are in the general social services sector to be involved and to provide input. But I think we're going to prioritize self-advocates, caregivers, and employment professionals in terms of our recruitment strategy.
And Christine has asked, will this be a national platform available en français in Quebec? Is that a short or a long-term plan?
That would be amazing. I think it's so interesting, because I was speaking to my husband about, doing this webinar today, and it was one of those, I wonder what we know about employment needs, and what can we do with that? And it started off as just a simple discussion, and then it became something, just a little bit bigger, where I'm like, okay, we'll do something really local, and we'll see who's interested and who wants to be involved. And it's starting to really grow, and interest and participation and involvement. I'm having a lot of people reach out to us and our team members about getting involved and wanting to be part of the research process, and participants who are saying, sign me up, put me on the list. I want to be involved. I want to have my voice in what you're building here. And absolutely, just like I had mentioned regarding the, moving outside of Ontario to other provinces, I think it would be a dream to have an opportunity to expand this and to make it available in French once we have, the optimal website functioning, participation, registered users. I think that would be a very timely opportunity to make it available in our second national language. Absolutely.
Wonderful. There are no additional questions in the question box. So I'd like to thank you all for your time and for your willingness to generously share your time, talent, and expertise and your research with us. Oh, there's one last question. Do you plan on offering training or a tutorial to individuals with autism spectrum disorder and their caregivers to help navigate the system?
That is an excellent question. I like that. We haven't actually talked about that as a team, but it might be, I could see that as being something as part of the, the intro to the website. It might be a video that, someone could play on the first page, but I'm not going to put words in my participants' mouth. And so again, phase 2 is really about let's hear from caregivers. Let's hear from autistic self-advocates. Let's hear from people in the community about, what works and what doesn't. If people say, I didn't even know where to start, then that might clue me and the rest of our team to say, hey, maybe we need an intro video or a training module. That's an excellent idea. I'm going to certainly write that one down.
Great, thank you. So that's the end of our time together today. Thank you, Priscilla and Jean, for sharing your time and expertise with us. Thanks to all our members and other attendees for spending this time with us. We hope you depart with some practical knowledge and bring back to your organization. We have a packed fall Spark Live calendar. Join us next week on October 21st at 11 a.m. Eastern, and we have Parent and Family Important Outcomes in Neonatology. Learn of outcomes of importance to parents and families and the related ethical, clinical, and research implications. As well, registration is now open for our annual conference taking place virtually on November 16th to 20th. To register, visit our website at childrenshealthcarecanada.ca. It's always great if you can watch live, as your questions and comments really enrich the discussion. But if you can't, the recordings of these sessions are made available after the fact on our Knowledge Exchange Network. So thanks again for joining us today. Thanks to Jean and Priscilla for this presentation, and to ChildBright for supporting our webinar program. Hopefully, we'll see many of you back here next week. Bye, everyone.